Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of What's Trending. My name is Roxana Islam, and I'm here with my colleague, Todd Rosenbluth. It's hard to believe that half the year is already over, so let's talk about some of these ETF trends that we've seen the first half of 2025. Todd, how have you been?
I'm doing great. It's super hot in New York, but that just means it's summertime.
Yeah, hotter than Dallas, which is very interesting and kind of funny. So Todd, back to the ETF trends of the first half of the year. What have been some of your favorite stories so far? I mean, I know there's been a lot.
Yeah, to me, the biggest story in the ETF year and the season is just Vanguard 500. It is on pace to blow away its record inflows. Vanguard 500 passed the Spider S&P 500 SPY as the largest ETF, and it keeps on getting bigger and bigger. It's likely to pass $100 billion real soon in terms of net inflows and past that point by the time we get to the end of the year. What's impressive this year versus last year is that the S&P 500 is not up 25%. It's barely up. It's up in the low single digits as you and I are talking today. So VU has impressed me. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean it's very impressive to see sort of this part of the story, because I remember, a couple of months ago, post Liberation Day, we had all that market volatility, we had a market pullback, but VU still had record inflows one of those months. And it just goes to show, I think, the strength not behind the product, but also the strategy and maintaining long-term views. I mean, what do you think of that? Do you think this is, passive products are going to keep sort of gaining share and gaining flows?
So I don't want to spoil my second thing that we're going to talk about, but yes, I think that VU and large cap core strategies and index-based products are going to continue to get bigger, but there's other parts of the portfolio. So I'd like to just pivot here, and I'd love for you to tell me, what is one of the most interesting stories to you in 2025?
I think you probably know what I'm going to say, and I'm going to talk about crypto. There's a lot going on in crypto right now. First of all, I want to talk about these spot Bitcoin ETFs. I mean, I think they're just continuing to exceed expectations. If you look at the iShares spot Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, it's currently around the 23rd largest ETF or so, and that's around 4,000 plus ETFs. So it's sitting up there with a bunch of large cap equity ETFs, some which have been around for decades. And this was only launched last January, so about a year and a half ago. And in terms of flows, it's the fourth largest year to date. So even if you look at Fidelity's FBTC, it's a big product, but not as big. That's made its way to the top of Fidelity's lineup. It's larger than FBND right now. So it just shows the magnitude of how these have performed. But I think, a fun part of the story is the altcoins that are coming out or potentially coming out this year. I mean, there's several issuers that have filed for spot Solana ETFs. You have VanEck, you have 21 Shares, Canary Capital, a few others as well. And it looks likely it's going to happen this year, potentially this summer. And there's a ton of other products that are in that pipeline that could potentially come out as well, too. And that's XRP, Dogecoin, Litecoin. And it really looks like the regulation might be more accepting of these products this year. And I think some of the pushback that I've heard is, spot Ether ended up not doing as well as spot Bitcoin. But, I think if you look at the market share of Bitcoin versus some of these other coins, it's not really a surprise, right, that Bitcoin had such a big gap with the other products. And I think where we're really going to see the value in these is when you look at these, I guess you could call them crypto index basket ETFs, where you have multiple products in a single ETF. So an investor could just invest in one ETF and have, maybe a market cap weighted version of Bitcoin, Ether, and potentially Solana in there. So I think that's, really the cool part and the valuable part of having all of these digital assets launched.
So I'm not surprised that this was your topic, and there's a lot of great things that are happening. You covered many of them. What's interesting to me is what we've seen with the options-based crypto ETFs, and that's exciting. So we've seen Neos that has an options income product that's been popular, BTCI. I think it has over 300 million. As we're talking, I've seen Calamos with some innovation that's more downside protection, either 100% downside protection or part of the way downside protection for people who are more risk averse but want to have some exposure to it. And then this has just been a very strong quarter. So you've even seen the Bitcoin mining products. So CoinShares has a Bitcoin mining ETF that is among the stronger performers. I know we tend to talk about crypto in the traditional manner, but there's many people who still want to get exposure through the equity markets as well.
Yeah, and it's, I love that you mentioned this, because I was actually going to go there next. Is that I love the wide variety of crypto products that are out now, especially some of the ones you mentioned, like the option income, like the structured protection products. I mean, it really proves that people, they aren't just looking at Bitcoin for its return. They're also looking for some of its other characteristics that could be a useful tool for its portfolio, like a volatility, for instance. So it's really cool to see Bitcoin become more integrated into the financial world and the ETF world this year with all these new product launches.
So I know I came with my first idea that was relatively boring, low cost, large cap equity exposure. You had something that was a little bit more exciting, a little bit more volatility. You have a second idea, and is it just as volatile or less?
So I do have a second idea, and it is just as volatile. So leveraged ETFs, I think, have also been a huge story this year, particularly those single stock ETFs. I mean, and these aren't particularly new this year, but I've just seen sort of an influx of these being launched. And I'll tell you, there was probably a point in my life where I didn't want to talk about leveraged ETFs as much because it seemed a little bit taboo, right? But now, I mean, if you think about it, it's about, if you look at the absolute number of ETFs out in the market, 10% of them are leveraged ETFs. So you kind of have to embrace it and, talk about these products because they are useful to investors, and retail investors have actually started looking more into these. They've really opened up doorways for investors to react to the market. And when you look at some of these single stock ETFs, I think what's interesting is you're seeing them in some of these you're not only seeing them in technology, you're seeing them in some of these more adjacent disruptive tech categories, with some of these more exciting stocks. So for instance, some of the most popular ones, they revolve around Tesla or Nvidia, but then you also have the non-tech sector names like Coinbase or Eli Lilly. So it's just it's a really cool way for investors to take advantage of these in their portfolios. I mean, I was just talking to an issuer earlier today that said they considered some of their leveraged single stock ETFs as part of their thematic lineup. So I think just really interesting use cases there for investors.
Yeah, and I'll just add that Direxion has been one of the pioneers within the leverage ETF space. They continue to innovate and bring out new products. It's exciting when we see their products come to market and they trade quite well. They're not the only ones that's in that market, but Direxion's a firm that I certainly have had my eye on from the leverage space.
Yeah, and you're very right. I mean, a lot of these products, they've been around for a while. They're gaining a lot of traction. Going back to the Liberation Day comments I made earlier, there was a lot of volatility in the market, and even though we saw it pull back, we saw some investors go more towards VU. Then we saw some more investors go more towards some of these leveraged single stock products that you mentioned. Some of them like SOXL, that's semiconductor industry, and then there's TQQQ, that's 3 times the NASDAQ 100. So there's just a lot of investors using these as tools in their portfolios to take advantage of market movements. And I think this kind of also goes back to my crypto conversation, just the breadth and the diversity of the ETF industry. And it shows that ETFs aren't just passive indexed products, even though that's what we've been known for.
You know what? You're right. That's actually my last topic I want to talk about is the active ETF universe and the active ETF ecosystem. That is, we're talking now, it's roughly 40% of the net inflows in 2025 have gone to actively managed ETFs. It's even more than that in terms of the number of products that have come to market. And I touched on covered calls. There's other ways to get exposure that's downside protected. But what's exciting to me in the active space is what's happening at the core level. We're seeing firms like Capital Group and T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. These firms are bringing their best and their brightest into the active space with proven records of managers for other strategies, and they're having some success. And I think that's likely to continue. I'm really excited that there's an active universe of products for advisors to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you mentioned when you mentioned core, because investors and advisors, they use these in different parts of their portfolio. I mean, they can use them as a core holding. They can use active as a satellite holding. Many of them use it as a mix of both, and many of them use them alongside passive strategies. So you kind of have the best of both worlds going on there.
Couldn't agree more. I think we're at the midpoint, right? So exciting times.
Yeah, well, all right. I guess there's obviously a lot of other trends we could discuss right now, but unfortunately we are out of time. If you want to check out more of our research, head to etftrends.com. I'm looking forward to doing this again soon. I'm sure next time I'll have some more crypto tidbits up my sleeve. Thanks for joining, everyone. See you later.